The bodily assumption of Moses definitely has a precedent as a tradition within both Judaism and Christianity, but the question is, where does this tradition come from? Now, oftentimes people look immediately to Jude, verse 9, where it tells us that the devil and Michael contended over the body of Moses, with Michael succeeding in the end. And then they compare this to the Jewish text, or Jewish/Christian text, the Assumption of Moses, which gives us a similar story. Now, in order to kind of understand what exactly Jude here is getting at, let's take a look at Jude verse 9 and then compare it to the account of Moses' death in Deuteronomy 34. Jude verse 9 tells us that Michael the archangel, in contending with the devil, when he disputed about the body of Moses, did not bring against him a reviling accusation, but said, "The Lord rebuke you." So, what does this mean? Michael the archangel was contending with the devil over the body of Moses? Well, let's look back to Deuteronomy 34 for the first-hand account of the death of Moses. Then Moses climbed Mount Nebo from the plains of Moab to the top of Pisgah across from Jericho. There the Lord showed him the whole land from Gilead to Dan, all of Naphtali, the territory of Ephraim and Manasseh, all the land of Judah, as far as the Mediterranean Sea, the Negev, and the whole region from the valley of Jericho, the city of palms, as far as Zoar. Then the Lord said to him, "This is the land I promised on oath to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, when I said, I will give it to your descendants. I have let you see it with your eyes, but you will not cross over into it." And Moses, the servant of the Lord, died there in Moab, as the Lord had said. He buried him in Moab, in the valley opposite Beth Peor, but to this day no one knows where his grave is. Moses was 120 years old when he died, yet his eyes were not weak nor his strength gone. So based off the text, the possibilities here are that Moses was either taken up into the celestial heaven, like Enoch and Elijah, and we know that they were taken up into the celestial heaven, and not the third heaven, the throne room of God, because we're told in John 3:13 that no one has ascended there before Christ. Codex Justinianus, or Ben, has a really phenomenal video on what exactly did happen to Enoch and Elijah, that's really what inspired this video, so go check that out. The link to that video will be in the description. Anyways, so the three possibilities are that Moses was taken up bodily into the celestial heaven, or that he really did die, his soul and body really were separated, and then he was resurrected, or he died and his body is being held in incorruption. Those are our three options. Now, all three of these can account for the fact that nobody knows where Moses was buried, as we're told in verse 8, which obviously is not an irrelevant detail, especially in the account of a death of such an important figure in the Bible. But it's verse 7, which tells us that Moses died at 120 years old, yet his eyes were not weak, nor his strength gone. It's that verse that needs to be reconciled. The word for died here is from the word used for the curse of death in Genesis 3. So it would be indicated that Moses really did experience the curse of death, which is more accurately the curse of exile or separation of the soul from the body. The question then is if he was resurrected and assumed, or if he is still waiting for the final resurrection, but his body is being held in incorruption. If the first of these is true, the question then is if he was resurrected and assumed, or if he is still waiting for the final resurrection, but his body is being held in incorruption. Similar to how many of the saints that die today, their bodies are held in incorruption in anticipation of the final judgment. If the first of these is true, then the resurrection would have to have been one similar to Lazarus' resurrection, where he will have to die again before the final bodily resurrection, probably in a similar way as will happen to Enoch and Elijah. I think the second option is the most likely, especially when we consider the context of Jude verse 9, where we hear about the Nephilim and the wickedness that led to the flood. We can understand the incorruption of Moses' body as being held in contrast to the wicked people who were entirely wiped out in the flood, not leaving a whole lot of relics behind. Incorruption is when a dead body is still held in a particular relationship with the soul which departed from it, in a way which preserves the vitality of the body by God's grace. This is an undeniable phenomenon, really. There's been studies done. There's one in particular that I want to look into more. There's a monastery in Ethiopia. I forget which monastery it is, but everybody who dies inside of it is held in their body is held in at least a certain degree of incorruption. Not just the monks that die in there, but everyone. I don't know exactly how true it is, but I've heard that medical researchers went there, did studies, and they found that there was at least a level of truth to the claim. But anyways, incorruption is a pretty undeniable phenomenon. We see many examples of it happening in saints' bodies where they go years with minimal corruption. When we hear in Deuteronomy 34, verse 7, that Moses' eyes were not weak nor his strength gone, we can immediately understand that this was not an ordinary death. The word translated here as strength comes from the word lach, which is often used to describe the freshness or moisture or life force, so to speak, of a plant. And so we can understand this as Moses' body was, and probably still is, being held in vitality and freshness. The question then is why it says his eyes were not dim. This could just mean that he died in wisdom. He died with with the ability of kingly judgment. He could see and discern rightly. In contrast to Jacob and Isaac, who when they cursed and blessed their sons, their eyes were dim. Moses, in his final blessings over Israel, he was able to curse and bless with proper vision. He could rightly discern and judge. He died in kingly wisdom. On the note of deathbed blessings, you can see a sort of progression or maturity from Isaac to Jacob to Moses. Isaac was blind and he was acting by touch and taste. But he was not acting by sight. And then Jacob's blindness was him also not acting by sight, but he was acting by faith. And then in Moses's, he moved beyond both of these, and his faith and his sight were aligned, where he could act through both of them. Again, demonstrating this unity of soul and body. If it means his eyes were not weak even after he died, then I can only imagine it meaning that just as his body is being held in a particular reality which sustains it in incorruption, so also Moses is able to participate in the world in a particular way even after dying. Now, before I finish this video up, I would like to just point out the story of the man of God in 1 Kings 13, whose story, well, it really does draw upon the story of Moses a lot. Insofar as he split the altar just like Moses split or broke the tablets of the Ten Commandments in light of the golden calf worship that happened in both Exodus and in 1 Kings. Also note the incident of the withered hand in 1 Kings 13, which reminds us of Moses' leprous hand in Exodus 4. Also like Moses, the man of God was denied entry to the land of his fathers because of his sin. This is also the case with Moses. The man of God sinned by eating and drinking when he was told not to. Moses sinned in his misuse of the staff of God in bringing water and food to the people. Moses is disobeying God's words in response to Israel's desire to return to the land of Egypt, in which they ate plentifully, is meant to be in the back of our minds as we read about the account of Jeroboam's sins in 1 Kings. He's trying to bring Israel back to the worship of the golden calves and the false worship of Nadab and Abihu, who he actually names his sons after. The man of God sinned by conceding to the temptation of those around him in contrast to God's will and drinking water and eating food. This is just like Moses' sin in Numbers 20. The man of God misused his proverbial staff or his prophetic ordination the same way Moses did. Despite this, the man of God was preserved from absolute disintegration, which is what the bodies of the false prophets faced in 2 Kings 23. Upon the death of the man of God, his body was guarded and watched over by the lion who killed him and the donkey who carried him to his death. Note is made in 1 Kings 13 that the lion did not devour his body and that the lion did not kill the donkey. Despite the man of God's sin, his body was still preserved in a way. There's a lot to say about this story, but in short, we can understand that the lion is like that which is above, the breath, and the donkey is like that which is below, the body. The lion is like the soul, and the donkey is like the body. We can understand the peace between the lion and the donkey, like the peace or preservation or unity between body and soul after death, which we see in the case of Moses. There is a supernatural peace or unity between that which is above and that which is below, even though he did die. The case of Moses' incorruption is even greater than this. where his body was not just preserved for the short amount of time, or his body was not just preserved from being burned on the altar like the false prophets, but Moses' body is probably still being held in incorruption, and we know that his body was brought somewhere entirely separate where no one else could even find him, unlike the man of God who was found and buried. That being said, let's sum all of this up. So, to kind of sum things up here, I think that the text indicates not that Moses was bodily assumed into heaven, although that is a possibility, I won't dismiss that completely, but rather that Moses did die and his body is being held in incorruption in anticipation for the final judgment. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed, make sure to leave a like, subscribe, leave a comment down below letting me know your thoughts on this topic. Let me know what you want to hear more of in the future. Pray for me, and God bless you.